I'm Grant Parry, usually joined by Brandon Brown here, but just me today. And I'm here with the one and only Jason Campbell, host of SEC State of Mind, former Auburn quarterback, first-round draft pick. Jason Campbell, thanks for joining the show here today.
I appreciate it, Grant. Thanks for having me on, man. Like I said, I know Charles Woodson well. So, Michigan, always I'm a fan of Michigan. I like them and I always have. Ever since I met Charles Woodson, it's made it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And everything to kind of, pull for you guys sometimes.
That's awesome. That's cool. During your playing career, how many run-ins with the Big Ten did you have? Did you have any clashes there? Any good games that you recall?
Man, I think 3 out of my 4 bowl games was against Big Ten. I think the first one was, I think we played Michigan. Yeah, 2000 we played Michigan. 2002 we played Penn State, and then 2003 we played Wisconsin. So got a chance to play against some legendary players at that time as well. But it's always been fun. Every time you play against the Big Ten, it's always, you'll see big offensive linemen for sure, big D linemen. And, as a college fan growing up, before you join the SEC and everything, like I've always watched all college sports, all college games. I wasn't really big on conferences until I actually joined one. And that's when I learned a lot about, South Division, North Division, all these different schools and, rivalry games and everything. But, it was always interesting to play against the Big Ten. It was always a fun crowd.
Yeah. Okay. My team, Michigan, your team, Auburn, we're both watching these playoffs from the couch. Let's get into these playoffs. So we've had some games this past weekend, a couple SEC showdowns. Ole Miss took on Tulane. We'll talk about that. But first, I want to get into that Bama, Oklahoma. Talk to me about that. What did you see out of those two SEC teams in a clash that turned out to be a really good one? Oklahoma got out to a big lead, and then Bama, they always kind of find a way to stay in games, whether they're playing well or playing bad, and they found a way to get back into this one and totally dominated it. So what did you see? Talk to me a little bit about both quarterbacks and just give me your perspective.
Yeah, you think about this ball game, you find out how two teams are so different, but both teams feed off defense, but which team can take a punch and respond. So Alabama came out, they was, Ty Simpson was under a lot of pressure early in the ball game. I think at one point Alabama had -3 yards rushing. Again,
Yeah.
even after the Georgia game, they
just a few short weeks after, yeah.
But the rushing game was getting shut down, and Ty was getting pressure, and not still sure why Ryan Williams is not involved in the offense, but when he is, it seems like he's having some issues catching the ball right now, and I think that's a confidence thing. He's kind of got in his own head, but this game showed me so much. Alabama coming off the game against Georgia, everybody's questioning whether they should be in the playoffs or not. All of a sudden, they leap into the ball game. They haven't played that well over the last 5 weeks. And then all of a sudden, Oklahoma comes out like the hair on fire. Boom, goes up 17-0. And then as well as anybody, Grant, the game changes on a self-inflicted play. You drop the punt, and all of a sudden now it's, boom, 17-10. And then you throw a pick 6 right before the half, and that's 17-17. So Alabama going in at the half had all the momentum. And the game flipped just that fast. And I feel like Oklahoma never really got back to being themselves after that because they was super aggressive when they came out to start the game. It's almost like they regressed a little bit from being aggressive, and they started playing tentative. And Alabama just kind of felt like they found their run game. And all of a sudden, the big guys up front started feeling comfortable and started saying, okay, instead of dropping back and letting R. Mason and his defense come after us and peel the ears back, we're going to attack them by rushing the ball now because now we got some confidence. And then they was able to start hitting the play action pass. And then Bernard got in the game and started making a great catch along the sidelines. Like, once their playmakers got involved, it's almost like they flipped back to the middle of the season when they was playing well before they went on that stretch or not. Oklahoma, Mateer, like I said, came out super aggressive, throwing some tight balls and tight windows. But after the interception, it kind of seemed like it got in his head a little bit too, because it wasn't just an interception, it was a pick 6. And I think he started to feel the pressure from the Alabama defensive front because he didn't have much time after that. They got those guys from Oklahoma on skates on the offensive line, and they couldn't protect. And when you can't protect in the second half and you can't run the ball, it's hard to win. And so I thought that Alabama took the punch and responded, but I felt like when Oklahoma got punched, they couldn't respond.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. You go down 17. I think a lot of people were counting out Bama, and then it just seemed like Bama made 1 or 2 plays, and then they were back in it, and it just seemed like you said, the flip switch, and Oklahoma couldn't quite figure out what to do. Talk to me a little bit about John Mateer and Ty Simpson. Obviously, Ty Simpson moves on here as Bama is now going to face Indiana. What did you like from those two guys throughout the year? I know Mateer was going through the hand injury, but tell me a little bit about watching those guys throughout the year. What did you like from both of those quarterbacks?
Let's start with Ty first. I think the thing with Ty at one point, people were talking about Ty as a Heisman candidate. He's playing really well after the Florida State game. He went on a run where he was just kind of eating up college football. People were talking about how, you can see the maturity at the quarterback position, and he was playing it really well. So I think overall, when you think about it, is Ty's a guy that I think may come out this year, depending on when the season is over with. And when you think about Ty, I think about toughness, grit. I think in the Iron Bowl, we hit him left and right, and the guy just kept getting up, kept fighting. He's taking punches in the media, and he still responds. So this guy is a guy that I think that he's tough, and he's tough mentally as well as physically. And I think that's the thing that's what keeps these guys and makes them a dangerous football team is you really can't rattle him. Like he'll have a couple series, and you're like, man, he's off a little bit, but then he shows up at the biggest moments, and I think that's exactly what he did this past weekend. When you think about Mateer, John Mateer was a guy that Auburn tried to get in transfer portal last year, but of course it made sense. He was going to go with his offensive coordinator, who's his quarterback coach at Washington State. He was going to follow him to Oklahoma. But when you think about Mateer, can run, can really throw the ball on the run. When he's pinpoint accurate, he's accurate. And then when he's sometimes he he can miss guys because he try to trust his arm too much and doesn't have his feet set, and he can miss some guys. But super athletic, man. Someone got a dog in him, from a quarterback position as well. And like I said, it'll be interesting to see what he does if he decides to leave or he decides to come back. The draft is not heavy this year in quarterbacks. I think a lot of coming into the season, that wasn't the answer. Coming to the season, everybody thought this was going to be one of the most loaded drafts of quarterbacks in a long time. They talked about Klubnik, they talked about Nussmeier, and neither one of those guys had great seasons.
Yeah.
And everything. So now you look at the quarterback position going to the draft, maybe John Mateer may take a swing at it, but I can see him coming back too, though, and saying, I want to compete one more season, especially with NIL. What's the rush? These guys getting paid NFL salary. So what's the rush?
Right. I saw Jeremiah Smith was making more than apparently than Jackson Smith and Jigba on the rookie contract, which is insane. But moving on here, we're actually we'll come back to Ole Miss. I want to talk about Texas A&M versus Miami. That game, somewhat of a letdown for A&M offensively too. I think they were the only team in the playoff so far that has not scored a touchdown. Talk a little bit about Marcel Reed. I was expecting them to move forward. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought they were going to edge out Miami. But Carson Beck and company gets it done. What'd you see in that one?
Man, defensive slugfest. You can kind of tell that when the game started, it was really windy. So that kind of takes away a lot of your deep ball shots, right?
Yeah.
Because how strong the wind is. It affects your kicking game. So sometimes you may try a field goal in certain areas where you saw how that affected Miami and early in the ball game, the kicking game. The ball kept getting pushed to the right. But you got to think, man, when you got the number one left tackle for A&M going against the number one defensive end in the country in Bain. When you talk about those two guys going head to head, and one of them said something this week and the other one didn't. A&M left tackle said, I'm really not worried about it. And talk about it. He put some bulletin board material up there.
Yeah.
And what Bain do, he come out there with, I think, 3 sacks, something like that, 4 tackles for loss or something. But, you don't ever do that when you're playing against a stellar guy like that who can get off the ball and he's big and strong. And but you think about A&M losing Le'Veon Moss in that early in that ball game hurt them because when it's windy, you got to be able to run the ball. and they weren't able to sustain the run against that defense in front of Miami. And it's the opposite, right? Going to the ball game, I think going to the fourth quarter, A&M probably had, Miami had like 90 yards rushing, but then they ended up having like 100+ yards rushing in the fourth quarter. And that's when you saw Fletcher hit the big run. You saw they started running the ball between the guard and tackle. They was eating up that A&M front seven, which is really, really good. But to me, it's Toney, man, the young receiver. Like, he was a difference maker. Like, special teams on the reverse, them getting the ball on key situations. Like, the young kid, man, he fumbled the ball. What happens? Fletcher shows that leadership, goes there, they get him right. He comes back, he responds. And this Miami team, man, they don't quit. And I tell you, the biggest thing that shocked me though is, Marcel Reed used his feet really well, but he was very inaccurate in this ball game. He missed a lot of throws that I thought he could have been a little bit more accurate. I know the wind affected some of them, but the ones that are 12 to 10, 12 yards under, the ones that the wind doesn't have a huge factor in, I feel like you got to hit those. I think they use those to stay on schedule offensively. And when you can't run the ball against a defense like Miami, they just pin their ears back. It does put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. But, hey, they was trying to drive him down the field, and Miami got the interception. So that's what playoff football is supposed to be, though. It's supposed to be, man versus man, not man versus boys. It's supposed to be big on big. And that's exactly what you saw in that ball game, was big on big.
Yeah. And to my surprise, and I thought Texas A&M was going to be the team that was going to be able to run the football, but it obviously was Miami, and it's kind of one of those games where probably whoever's going to be able to run the football is going to have that edge, and Miami comes out of that one. Don't want to spend too much time here on the Ole Miss Tulane game. I mean, the game wasn't too exciting, but just give me a note or two on Trinidad Chambliss. He's an exciting player. He's actually from up this way in Michigan. Went to Ferris State and found his way down there with Lane, and no longer with Lane anymore, but still with Ole Miss at the moment. Talk about Trinidad and what you've seen out of him.
Yeah, Trinidad, like I said, man, it's crazy. If he had another season, like, this guy could probably be a Heisman candidate. Realistically, like, he didn't even start the year off, and when his opportunity came, he made the most of it. But this guy, he's a dual threat. Again, can run, can throw. He's not the biggest guy, but he plays with a chip on his shoulder. And like you said, someone coming from like D1 AA and all of a sudden playing, big time college football. It just goes to show you, man, those Cinderella stories in college. He has one of them, and he'll be battle tested. They go against Georgia for the second time here in Sugar Bowl. But overall, he's one of my favorites to watch this season in college football.
Yeah, he's a fun one. All right, so I'm gonna hit this last segment here with you. I'm gonna have you predict this next round of playoffs. Give me who you think's moving on, and that'll wrap up the show. This is obviously always presented by FanDuel. Find us on Bleav. But Jason Campbell, starting with Oregon and Texas Tech, who do you have moving on from that one?
Man, Oregon had a tune-up game this past week, and typically last year the teams that sat at home struggled to win that first game that they played in.
Yeah,
Texas Tech got a really good defense. Bailey's a beast. I'm gonna have to go. Gosh, can't believe I'm saying it. I'm going Oregon.
Oregon, okay. All right, that's gonna be a good game. I'm excited for that one. All right, moving down. We got the Rose Bowl, Alabama, Indiana. I think IU is about a 6.5 point favorite. Who do you like in that?
Mendoza, Heisman winner. Defense versus pretty powerful offense. Indiana just played a tough game against Ohio State, right? So that was it beat a tough team in a neutral site. But again, I'm going with the upset. I'm going Bama.
Hey, let's go. Come on. Bama and DeBoer, move on. All right, moving to the All-State Sugar Bowl. We got Trinidad Chambliss taking on, with Ole Miss, taking on Georgia and Kirby Smart. Who do you like in that one? A little SEC matchup there.
This one, the first time these two teams played,
electric
Lane versus, Lane Kiffin versus Georgia. When you think about Kirby and him being together at Alabama, seeing so much of each other in practice. But now Lane's not there. Charlie White's calling the plays, and Georgia's defense had a chance to kind of rest up a little bit, get some guys back healthy. Sugar Bowl has kind of been their go-to spot. I'm going to go Georgia in that one.
Georgia. Okay. I like it. I like it. All right. Last but not least, we got Miami coming off that win versus Texas A&M, taking on Ohio State. What do you like in that one? That's a classic. That's a logo game right there. The Buckeyes and the Hurricanes. It's a good one.
The game is on the 31st.
I'll tell you right now. Yep, 31st, 7:30.
On 31st. Man, what a way to end the year. Two classic teams, Ohio State, Miami. Defense. I think Ohio State gets this one just because I think Jeremiah Smith is going to be a matchup problem. Julian Sayin can throw the ball really well. You give him time. I do think Bain, those guys will put pressure on him and everything. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, but I think Ohio State wins at 23-17.
2017. All right. And then last but not least, who do you have winning the whole shebang? Give me your winner, your big winner.
Well, that's a tough one. Winning it all.
Yeah. Give me your favorite.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm probably going to go with Georgia.
Georgia. That's my pick. I'm picking Georgia as well. Hey, we won't tell any Auburn fans, but
yeah, I know he has experience in these games, and he's been doing it for a long time. And the way they ended the season, they was hitting on all cylinders. And the way Gunnar Stockton is playing, like he's playing just as good as any quarterback out there. So
yeah,
I have to get an edge to Georgia.
Yeah, I feel that. After I saw them hold Bama to 3 or negative 3 yards rushing, I'm like, man, I might slide them in as my favorite there. But all right, well, Jason, thank you for joining the show. I appreciate you. You were the co-host of SEC State of Mind, former first-round draft pick, SEC Offensive Player or SEC Player of the Year. Appreciate you taking the time, man, talking some ball, talking some quarterback. Appreciate it as always. This is presented by FanDuel. Find us on Bleav Sports Network. And thank you. Appreciate the time, Jason.
I appreciate it, Grant. Enjoyed it. And best out of Michigan.
Appreciate you there. Thank you, man.